Hi, I'm Johnny.Decimal, and in the videos in this series I've given you an overview of my system, and we've reached the point where I think all of these concepts come together, and what I'm going to show you now is a real-life example, so you can really see a tangible how this feels in real life. Because how I would like you to think about this is that the problem I'm trying to solve is the one where you have some job to do at your computer, and you'll see in a minute the job we're going to talk about is really quite mundane, but you have something to do at your computer, and when you sit down, it can be very difficult to just get yourself back in the mindset to do that thing, to remember where everything was. And that's a cause of stress and frustration, and it causes you to not want to do these jobs. And that is not a healthy way, I think, to be. And I would like to try and help you improve that. So one thing is important to realize is that we context switch so often with modern computers because they make it possible. They don't just make it possible, they positively enable it, which is the act of doing something different in every single moment. It's so easy. You have, sitting watching me now, you have the entire world. You could do anything in the world on your computer right now. You could find or read or reach anything. And so it's very difficult with all of that, without putting some layer of control over it, to be able to come into that and to get yourself back to where you were. And I like to think of Johnny.Decimal as that layer of control over your context switching. It allows you to quickly context switch back to the place you need to be to do the job you need to do. All right, so here's a real life example from my actual life. In May last year, 2025, we moved out of the city of Canberra, and I had some money on my prepaid travel card to reclaim that I wanted back. Not much money, but some money. And at the time, that wasn't possible because the transport system had just changed, and reasons isn't so important. But let's just say I couldn't do that at the time, and so I had to start tracking this longer term piece of work, which is to get the money back off the system. And here's how I did that. So we introduced the concept of the JDex in the previous video, and I said that the JDex is the heart of everything in your system. So let's go to my JDex and let's find the place that I do this piece of work. Okay, so in a previous video, we discussed this idea of areas and categories and having two decisions to make to get from the top of your system with everything in it down to the place you need to be. So let's do that here. We're in Bear here. This is my Life Admin Systems JDex, and it should be no surprise that we are looking in the Life Admin area. I do have other areas here just for note. So I've got this 2029 Create and Collect, which is a bunch of collected artifacts and things that I've made over the last 15, 20 years. That's not Life Admin. That's a different area of my life. So that's why they're in a different place. But reclaiming money from a public transport card is absolutely Life Admin. So we'll expand that one. And as I'm talking, have a look through this and you can make the next decision. First thing to realize is that those other areas in my system have now disappeared. You can stop thinking about them entirely. And now we've got a simple decision to make again. Don't forget, at most 10 choices, but preferably fewer. Here we've got 5. So you can probably figure out where we're going to look for this public transport card. And no surprises, it's in 12, where I live and how I get around. Something I like to think about, so hopefully you could have worked that out at home and you've never seen my system. And I like to think, and this is how we designed Life Admin, the design goal is to design something that a stranger could use. You want a stranger to be able to sit at your computer and for it to be so obvious where things are that you cannot possibly get lost. And hopefully that's what we've got here. They should be unambiguous. So now that we are in this category 12, what we're going to do is use search to find the ID that we're after. And we're after something public transport related. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to search my JDex for public transport. And there you go. Hardly have to type much. And there it is. Now, you might at this point think, well, I wouldn't have searched for public transport. I would have searched for something else. Access Canberra is something that I might have searched for here because that's the government organisation that manages the city of Canberra. Well, and let's see what we get if we do Access Canberra. I get nothing. But watch this. What you can do, this is your JDex. You can change this as much as you want, and it's just a notes app. What I do here is I just type. So I've just typed Access Canberra in my own note. And now when I come up here to search and type Access Canberra, that note gets found again, right? What we've done is we have created ourselves like a little mini Google on our own computer. And something else I spoke about earlier when I said that search was often not very good because you are searching such a broad scope that your computer gives you so many results. Whereas here, what we're searching, I'm not even searching my entire JDex in this scenario because in Bear, I've got 12 selected down the left-hand side there. When I search, I'm only even searching in category 12. So my focus is so much narrower, and therefore the results that I get are much fewer and of a much higher quality. So it really is very easy to find the thing that you're looking for. Just as a reminder, this whole thing that we're looking at, the Life Admin System, is a thing you can buy. JDHQ.Johnny.Decimal.com has the details. So you can get this. It's about 150 IDs that me and Lucy spent 2 months designing. We looked through the whole history of our previous lives and thought about everything. We designed it to cover 90% of the things that 90% of people do. So it won't cover everything in your life, but it's been out for a year now and we've stress tested it and it's pretty comprehensive. The only thing it doesn't cover is things like your hobbies and your job because we can't know what they are because we don't do them. So you can get this at JDHQ.Johnny.Decimal.com and you basically download it and install it and you can be this organized this afternoon, which is really nice. So what I've done, I have made my Bear window full screen just to get that side stuff out of the way. And let's have a look at this note. Now, I'm not going to take you through everything, but you can see last year what I've done is in this call log, I've made myself some notes because what happened was that I called them last year. I asked about getting the cash and they told me it wasn't possible yet. And they told me to call back later. So I just wrote some notes, including Barbara, the lovely lady I spoke to. And then I called them back some months later. We're now in October 2025. And I called them. I was in Japan at the time. I called them back. I recorded the number that I called them on. I was told again that I still couldn't... they hadn't figured out how to refund the money yet and to call back in 6 months. Now, 6 months, that's a long time. That feels like the sort of thing I'm going to forget. And I'm in Japan. How am I going to remember to call them back to get this $28? Wasn't very much money, but it was important. It's my money. So what I did was, let's crack open my task management system for which I use things. And lo and behold, this should look very familiar. What I do in these videos, because I show my actual system, is I hide all of the stuff that I'm not showing you on the video. So that's why there are underscores down on the left-hand side there. That just allows me to show my actual system without having to worry about Lucy having to blur things on the video. Here is my actual category 12 in my actual system. And it should be very familiar because it looks the same as my JDex because the JDex is at the top and everything else cascades down. So here we are. We have this task, which is to call Access Canberra and ask about my MyWay refund. If we have a look at this task, I've just done a few extra things for quality of life in here. I put the specific ID at the end, 12.36, because you'll see it's under this general header of 12.30, getting around, which again matches up with the Life Admin System. And what I've done is I've put a link to the actual Bear note in the task. And the point of this is that your computer will allow you to do all of these things. You can help yourself in this context switching. Don't come to this task and have it be so vague that you think, well, where are the notes to do with that? I look at this task and it's next to impossible. I would argue it's impossible for me not to immediately know, and let's just click that, and there we go, to immediately know where these notes are. So when the task comes due, I can context switch instantaneously. I've also recorded a course, Johnny.Decimal Task and Project Management, which is part of our broader Johnny.Decimal University, which also includes our workshop that walks you through setting up your own system. That is also at JDHQ, and that includes the Life Admin System, because if you're going to manage your tasks and so on, use the Life Admin System as a good start. So that's a nice bundle to really get started and get going. JDHQ.Johnny.Decimal.com. So then what happened was, in January, we're now in 2026, I'm talking to you in February 2026. In January, I got an email. And if we have a look at my email, here is my email, and have a look down the left-hand side of my email there. No surprises, it looks the same, because of course it looks the same. Why wouldn't it look the same? So now I can immediately find everything to do with Access Canberra, and what this email told me was that it was now possible for Access Canberra to process my refund. So let's do that. And at this point, the purpose of this video isn't to gloat that I got $27 back, so we'll run through these details quite quickly, but you get the idea. Here we are in January. I've made myself a note that it's possible to get the money back. I've filled in some online form. I've left myself a reference to that online form in case I need it again later. And I've saved the PDF. And where do you think I've saved the PDF? I've saved the PDF in my file system. And guess what? It looks exactly the same, right? With the JDex, my index at the heart of everything. And I can now reach out to my tasks, to my email, to my file system. And here we are at 12.36 public transport. That you will note is the same header as I have in my JDex for consistency. And there is the PDF of the form that I submitted to get back my $27. I think we're done, because then a few weeks later, I got back 27 Australian dollars, and I left myself a little note there. Case closed. We win again. I can now go to things and I can complete that task. And that is job done. All very easy to not be stressed with the Johnny.Decimal system. Now, this might feel trivial. $27, ha, very good. But A, that's B, money, right? And B, imagine if this was something serious. This is your project at work. This is how I used to manage projects at work. This is how I manage every aspect of my business. See the other series where I'm going to show you how I do this with my small business system. This is the heart of everything. You can be less stressed and more in control with the Johnny.Decimal system.